question we're up to? 4?
Check. We're up to 5.
5. All right, yeah, so we left off, we were talking about derived demand. So what is derived demand? Who remembers what we talked about last class? What's derived demand and why do we care about that? Why is that significant to us as global marketers?
Derived demand, when it comes to industrial products, it's that the demand comes from the level of supply.
And so tell us more about that.
When it comes to derived demand, it's that the demand is coming from sources that aren't controllable by the people that are producing the product that's demanded.
So the demand for one product is dependent on the demand for another product. So that's something very significant for us to internalize and understand. Remember last time we talked about the fact that if new construction of homes is going to decline, you might think, oh well, so maybe that's some carpenters are going to get laid off, but remember we pointed out that, well, if the number of new homes being built is going to decline significantly, then the demand for toilets, light fixtures, locks for doors, the demand for those items are also going to decline. Does that make sense? Of course, there's a replacement market for locks and doors and toilets. So that demand is not tied to new construction. But we pointed out that for new construction, and this is something when we talk about housing starts, it's certainly one of the key economic indicators, and that's why I mentioned that, because there's demand for any number of products that we could talk about, but certainly as it relates to new construction of housing, this is something that we look at when we're evaluating the economy. And we're trying to determine whether or not, for example, are we in a recession? And what we can anticipate is going to happen in the economy in the future. So just think about in a typical house, even in a small house, how many doors there are. To a door for each bedroom, a door for each closet. So very easily, in one house, you could have the need for a couple of dozen doors. We'll multiply that by thousands of homes. And if those new homes are not being built, then the demand for doors, locks, hinges, and so forth are going to decline. And so we need to understand that as global marketers so that we could properly forecast how many units to produce, but also importantly, understand on a global basis the demand for a particular product and also the capacity. So very often we talk about the capacity of a particular industry to produce a certain number of units. And when the economy is in a recession, one of the things that we often hear spoken about is the fact that there's overcapacity in a particular industry. That means the industry has the ability to make significantly more units than are being demanded. That's a huge problem.
So layoffs occur.
Absolutely. So company starts to cut their costs. And as Daniel was saying, sometimes that means that they're going to lay people off. Because, they might actually even shut down.
They have multiple facilities, yeah.
So it's a very big issue, and it's very relevant to our discussion. What else would be related in terms of what we're talking about here with regard to derived demand? What would be another example, not in industrial markets, because that's a good example of industrial markets, but what about in consumer markets? Because right now we're trying to show that there's a relationship between consumer demand and industrial demand. So believe it or not, there's companies that manufacture equipment that could make hinges, locks, toilet bowls. Those are what we call OEM suppliers. What does OEM stand for? Original equipment manufacturer. So that's why it's so important to understand the impact when there's a decrease in consumer demand, because it affects the demand for industrial products as well. But what else? What else is significant? Are you familiar with the term complementary products?
Yep.
So what does that mean? Who could give us an example of two products that are complementary, and tell us what that means?
Toothbrush and toothpaste.
Yeah, that's a good example. So explain to us why that's a good example. What does that tell us about the relationship between those two products? Why do we consider them to be complementary?
Because you can't use one without the other. And
So
you have to buy both.
And so what happens if the demand for toothbrushes declines? What's going to happen to...
Demand for toothpaste will decline also.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable assumption. Now, why the demand for toothbrushes might decline is a separate issue. But those products are products that are used together, and we refer to them in economics as complementary. What else? Who could give us another example? Products that are used together.
A laptop and a laptop case.
Yeah, that's a good example. So tell us more about that.
Well, I have a handy dandy laptop case right here, and theoretically, I guess it could be used for something. Some people put toothpaste on their zits and stuff, so sometimes they have alternate, but primarily this is used for a laptop, and I probably wouldn't invest in it if I wasn't going to buy a laptop, because otherwise it'd be wasting
So
money.
that's
Buy a cheaper bag.
kind of a shock-absorbing bag. You wouldn't just like put papers in there, or you
It's
carry
got a
your
nice
textbook in
fiber
there.
Layer in here. It's really nice actually. If you feel it.
So what are you suggesting to us? That when the demand for laptops decreases, that the demand for
So
those
too.
carriers are
Me
also
too.
going to decline?
Exactly.
And we'd have to do an analysis to determine whether or not that change is directly proportional, right? So we don't know if it's going to be one for one, right? Maybe some people now, they don't purchase those cases. But I think it's a reasonable assumption to say if the demand for laptops, if people are buying less laptops, well, then they're also going to be buying less carrying cases. It seems reasonable. I mean, we'd have to study it further to understand if people are buying those cases to protect their existing laptop, or do they usually buy them at the same time? When you buy a new laptop, you also buy a protective case. So it doesn't mean that the demand is going to go away, because there's still a replacement market. Go ahead, Harvey.
Now, I was just going to say, is there, because we're talking about complementary products, right, and using these as an example, is there something for more, because I'm pretty sure I've learned about more loosely, like complementary, let's say, if you're going to buy, I don't know, burger patties and ketchup, definitely go together. Certainly, you know, I feel like one could affect another, because a lot of people do eat them together, but they're not necessary, you know, like this is almost guaranteed. Very few people will probably buy this case they weren't going to get a laptop. Someone may buy ketchup because they're weird and they eat it with eggs, you know? So I was wondering if there's a different term for that kind of product.
As separate from what we described with these scenarios?
Yeah, like we call these complementary, so I'm wondering if there's supplement. I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's a difference, or that would also be under the same category.
Yeah, at a different at a different level. So. Yeah, I see what you're saying, that they don't necessarily, just because they're used together doesn't mean, and that's my point, is that it doesn't mean that it's directly proportional. It doesn't mean that it's going to be a one-for-one decline. But you would have to determine to what extent it's considered to be a complementary product. Some could be very closely related in terms of the change in demand. It could be one for one. In other cases, not so much. Like, for example, it's true that you might use ketchup with hamburgers, but what about ketchup could be used with other foods as well?
Like eggs.
Right, with eggs, apparently, with eggs. I would say it's a different levels of change in demand. And that's different from substitute products. That means that products replace each other. So if you don't drink milk, you might say that orange juice is a substitute for that. Or maybe some people think that if you don't use ketchup, you might use mustard. Right? It really depends.
Maybe milk and soy milk would be a good example.
Of substitutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that those are substitutes. But we'd have to ask ourselves, what is the unique selling proposition for each one of those products? Because soy milk offers different benefits. Right? What makes soy milk unique from what we call, basic traditional milk?
No dairy, no lactose.
Yeah, so they could be direct or indirect competitors. I would say that they're pretty close direct competitors and substitutes for each other, even though there's lactose in regular milk. I think still you would say that those are direct competitors. And there'll be substitutes for each other. All right, next question. All right, we talked about the model of economic development. And the next question says, in what stage of the 5-stage model of economic development is an industrialized economy's focus more on low-cost manufacturing of a variety of consumer and some industrial products? They buy from all categories of industrial products and services. Which stage is that? Is it traditional society? Nope, it's not traditional society, right? All right, what is traditional society? That's on page 399.
Part of drive to maturity.
You guys don't remember traditional society?
That's the very beginning.
That's the first one? The stages? What are you asking?
What is it? What's the traditional society?
It's like when you're kind of, I guess, like a very low country on the totem pole when it comes to resources, so you're kind of doing natural resources.
Well, yeah, low in terms of in level of industrialization, so it's not industrialized, and yeah, the focus is on trying to access or mine the natural resources, but that's not what we're describing here, right? What we're describing here is what?
Drive to maturity.
Right, drive to maturity. Which would be a good example. So these are industrialized economies.
Czech Republic.
Yeah, Korea.
Czech
Yep,
Republic.
yep, definitely.
You only know that from the book. Are we supposed to know those countries?
He's smart. What do you mean? What? You think he read the book?
Yeah.
You see what happens when you read the book?
He has it open. in
You
front of
see?
him.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
Really big.
Yeah, Lautman, you're the man. All right, number 7. Who's going to read number 7? Go ahead, Lautman, go ahead, you're on a roll.
A variety of factors affect the choice of channels in a foreign market. All the following points should be addressed prior to the selection process success. Wait, what?
So it says if a country is in stage 5, the age of mass consumption, where does the country purchase most of its high-tech products and services?
3, 4.
What are you talking about? Am I right?
That's 7, right?
Yeah, you're right. Oh, sorry, I only have cuisine. My bad.
Yes, indeed. So, I think this is actually pretty straightforward, right? Because what's really the only real choice? Which one?
E.
Really? Really?
That was
C.
C.
C? What are E?
So for high-tech products and services, so really for high-tech, the only real choice is other stage 5 suppliers,
Oh,
right? Who else? We have to buy from each other, from other stage 5 suppliers that are in the age of mass consumption. Now, that's specifically as it relates to high technology products and services. But I think what some of you were addressing is, if it were for just general consumer products, then it could be stage 3 and stage 4. But high tech, that means that we're going to have to supply each other. So if we don't have the production capability ourselves, then we're going to have to buy it from other industrialized markets.
With that specific model, with the Rostow's model, is he using like a first, second, third world as a key, as like a guideline for how to make these definitions, or is he coming up with a different way to define each one of these countries?
Well, certainly third world countries could be a part of this model, right? So that would be, stage 1, stage 2, and then, so those would be good examples of what the model is addressing. So absolutely.
Well, that, I guess the only issue if we're doing that then though, isn't it that countries that are considered like undeveloped countries, such as like take for example Israel is still considered an undeveloped country because it's so young, even though they're selling technology on like what I guess you would consider a stage 5 level.
The model specifically, I mean, it's not all encompassing. It's not going to address every aspect of economic development for every single country, but the model addresses certain key parameters as the basis for evaluating the stage, but certainly there could be other factors.
So it's kind of based off of like first, second, third world countries, but it's with a much more I guess like leniency, I guess.
Well, I mean, it could certainly be some exceptions.
Right. Okay.
Right, so like what the example that you're giving, I would say is, doesn't fit neatly into this model, right? So it says, well, you don't have, large manufacturing capability, but yet at the same time, you use high-tech equipment and high-tech products. So, yeah, I would say that would be an exception to this particular model.
Okay.
And there's other models that also look at levels of economic development and use certain slightly different parameters. Number 8. Who's going to be number 8? Okay, go ahead.
Well, which of the following is perhaps the best indicator of the country's abilities to benefit from and use technology as economic leverage? Dimension of development. Education system, industrialization. The educational system.
Is that your final answer? Yes, it's A, the educational system. So really the best indicator of a economy's ability to implement and leverage the technology is its educational system. Does that make sense? Right, so that would be a good thing to look at if we're trying to determine, has country or an economic system or a particular economy, have they really benefited from the use of the technology? And one way we could find that out is by looking at the educational system. That would certainly be a good indicator. And that's certainly one important approach to grouping countries and classifying countries, is their ability to utilize the technology that's available to them. So do you ever remember there's an episode of Star Trek that has these aliens. Anybody watch Star Trek? Somebody? Anybody? Yeah? Which one? The original, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager.
Voyager.
Was he the original?
Next generation.
Yeah.
Voyager.
So they have this one episode where they have a group of aliens that seem somewhat simple-minded, but yet they have access to all this technology. Because what they do is they go around the universe, apparently, and they acquire technology. And they have very sophisticated technology, even more sophisticated than the Federation, but they don't know how to use it. So, yeah, that's certainly a factor that we need to consider in evaluating a particular group of countries or an economic system. All right, number 9. Number 9. Remember we talked about ISO 9000? What's driving that? That's what this question is asking. What's driving the strong level of interest in ISO 9000?
Marketplace requirements.
Yeah, the marketplace requirements. So what does that mean? So that's not an example of, remember we talked about product homologation, which means that that's something that's regulatory. What do you think? What do you think? Is ISO 9000 something that's required, that's regulatory? Remember we talked about how the government in a particular market might dictate the packaging requirements, what information is on the packaging, and which languages, and what the label looks like. That's different from us saying that we want to modify certain aspects of the product, or change the price, or customize the advertising. So ISO 9000 is a focus on quality. So the concern, and the reason why ISO 9000 is getting more and more attention, it's not new to the world, but there's definitely a desire to try and bring some standardization to quality in many markets. So there's definitely a marketplace demand for ISO 9000. Yeah, we're on to the next one already.
Oh, wow, I missed that.
Yeah, I know.
Too quick for me.
10. Who's going to read 10?
I'll do it.
You're going to do it? You sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Quiz E? You're on Quiz E?
Quiz D or E?
D. Go ahead.
D, yeah.
D.
10. What is the chief reason that most U.S. business services companies enter the international market? A, service their U.S. clients abroad. B, to make high profits. C, to avoid government restrictions. D, to find and service new international customers. And E, to avoid governmental controls in the domestic market. I'm going to go with A, final answer.
Yes, A. A is the best answer. To service their U.S. clients abroad. So it says, what is the reason most U.S. business service companies enter the international market? It's because they already have an existing customer base, and when their customers expand beyond their borders and become global marketers of their services, then what does that mean? They're going to follow them, right? So the reason for them to provide services internationally is because their customers are selling products or providing services internationally. Questions? All right. Quiz E. Yeah, Philip?
The ISO 9000, I mean, could it become like a bigger deal? Like right now we're saying that it's a marketplace requirement, but I mean, could it get to the extent that it would kind of go to more government regulated? Because what?
Yeah, ISO 9000 has been around for a long time, so its focus, or the attention to ISO 9000 has shifted over time. You know, it's very important in manufacturing. If you talk to engineers and also to people that work with manufacturing organizations, they realize the importance of ISO 9000 and what it represents. So remember last class we said that with ISO 9000 it means that there's a reduction, for example, in the number of quality inspections. So if you know that an organization is ISO 9000 certified, then you don't need to re-inspect the products that are being shipped. Does that make sense? So it reduces redundancy. You know they're certified. They're following a certain process that's been clearly defined by ISO 9000, certain standards that need to be followed, that are applicable to, you know, a variety of manufacturing situations, regardless of the product that's being produced. And so there's benefits in working with other companies that are also ISO 9000 certified. So ideally, what we're suggesting is, wow, wouldn't it, the reason why it's getting some, a fresh look, if you will, because I don't want you to think that this just like came out, like this is the latest and greatest, you know, 2012 ISO 9000. The reason why it's getting a fresh look is because people are starting to realize, as it gains momentum over the last few decades, is, wow, like wouldn't it be great if everybody was ISO 9000 certified? That's what the focus of this discussion is that that's kind of the push right now. And it's particularly relevant in the European Union, because the extensive amount of trade that goes on amongst those countries, ISO 9000 as the standard would really be ideal. And one of the things also that the EU strives to achieve, not just quality standardization, but also what we call harmonization of pricing. What is that? What do we mean when we talk about the harmonization of price? Because that's a big part of the EU, right? Part of one of the key tenets, if you will, of what they're trying to achieve. So there's a common currency, the euro. We're moving to standardization of quality, which, do you think that's reasonable? I mean, do you think that's a worthwhile objective? Can you see why there's a push for that?
Yeah.
So even though, I mean, countries in the European Union, literally, I mean, like just over the border, they have ISO 9000 certification, and you could rely upon a certain level of quality. And other manufacturers, you know, like literally the sort of like the next town over, or because you cross the border, it's actually the next country, that they don't have ISO 9000 certification. So certainly that would be a good example of where there's certainly a push and the marketplace demand, and consumers are also pushing for that too. Because certainly one of the objectives of the EU, or any type of trade agreement, is to facilitate trade. The trade of goods across borders. And so what the EU is trying to achieve in part is this sort of like borderless marketplace. where we could transfer goods from one country to the other, and that you should be able to rely on a certain standard level of quality, and that the price is the same. That's what we talk about. We talk about harmonization of pricing, is that the price of the product should be the same in all those markets. So what they don't want to happen is somebody to buy the goods in one market, although this sounds entrepreneurial, it is, but what they want to discourage is that somebody buy the goods in one market for a lower price and then turn around and sell it in another market, like literally across the border even, at a higher price. So they said, if we could have a uniform currency, we have one currency, we have standardization of quality, we have the same price, right? That's one of the key objectives. That's what they're trying to achieve. All right, so let's talk about Walmart. Yeah, this is a true-false question about Walmart. Remember last class we talked about distribution. We talked about different channels of distribution. We talked about different retailers within those channels. So we said Walmart is an example of what? What channel does Walmart operate in? Mass merchant. They're a mass merchant, also sometimes referred to as a discounter. Macy's is a department store. CVS, drugstore. What else? What about wholesale folks? Right? Convenience stores? Sam's Club.
7-Eleven.
Oh, part of the other one? Okay, yeah, as a wholesale club, right? So Costco, Sam's Club, BJ's, right?
And then convenience stores, such as 7-Eleven.
Yeah, 7-Eleven is a good example of a convenience store. And then we also mentioned that all those other small stores that are located at, or we should say co-located with gas stations. And,
Then we talk about grocers.
right, what about grocery? Who are some of the...
ShopRite.
Yeah, ShopRite is a good example. The largest grocery store, the largest traditional grocery store is Kroger, followed by Albertsons, which they're not big in the New York area, but they are very large. And we said that the largest grocer, not traditional grocery store, but the largest grocer is Walmart. Right. And so this question asks us, true or false? Walmart's strength in distribution is its internal internet-based system. Yeah, absolutely. Walmart has a lower operating cost than other retailers. They operate very efficiently. They're very good at managing inventory. And in many cases, what that means is minimizing inventory. Why do we care about minimizing inventory?
Holding costs are very expensive.
Yeah, their holding cost is very expensive, which includes the space that you're going to store the inventory and also the cash that you're tying up in the inventory. So you're tying up working capital. So nobody wants to hold inventory. Manufacturers don't want to hold inventory. Retailers don't want to hold inventory. And so there's an important concept known as just-in-time. JIT. JIT focuses on the inventory arriving when you need it. Now you've got to have some lead time, right? Of course there's going to be a lead time involved, but in many cases businesses expect to be able to make a phone call in the morning and then by afternoon they could get whatever it is that they ordered. So for example, local pharmacies, when they need certain prescription medications, because you can imagine prescription medications are very expensive. What they do is they can't keep everything on hand, they can't keep everything in stock, They certainly can't keep, in many cases, 3 or 4 bottles of the product on the shelf. So what do? They're able to contact the distributor, and they could get the merchandise delivered the same day. So if somebody comes in and they said they need a certain prescription, they say, come back at 3:30 and we'll have it for you. So certainly the Walmart's ability to manage the distribution system is a source of competitive advantage. So they link, they're linked to their suppliers. So they have a reorder point. The system tells them, right, the computer tells them when they've sold the 3rd to last bottle of orange juice, whatever it is, and that they order more.
Doesn't Dell practice just-in-time like assembly of computers?
Well, what Dell does is, I think that's a good illustration of make to order. So 2 concepts we need to be familiar with: make to order and make to stock. And so what they do is focus a lot on make to order, so they don't just build 25,000 computers and hope that customers are going to purchase what it is that they made. So they try to manage that process by waiting, in many cases, not every, of course they have some standard level of production, but giving customers the opportunity to place an order for a particular product, and then that's when they produce it.
I think that they give you a limited number of options, which means that they can produce X amount of this type of computer with such and such variety, and we perceive it as made to order, because they give you those small varieties. It's not like they have 100 different options. It's 3 different options for 15-inch Dell laptop.
And so how many, so that's good, they're trying to manage the level of complexity, but so that's for 3 different models for the 15-inch laptop, and what about for the others? So there's still a lot of complexity for them, right? Because that's just basically one model, right? That's not their whole...
That's a product line. The Dell laptops for 15 inches is separate from the 17.
Right. And so they have 3 of those models, and then if we're saying like, we're assuming that you're the subject matter expert on Dell manufacturing, then they have 3 for the 17-inch and so forth, but they make some items.
So they can put you a different cover and then case your laptop.
Yeah, do you?
Yeah. I'll come 60% of the way there.
Because what they do is they have a sort of a hybrid strategy. They've definitely been trying to move, and they've made a lot of progress, certainly. I think that for the most part, most people would argue that it is make to order, but certainly they have some aspects of their business that are make to stock. Like they have an idea of how many 15-inch with this processor and so forth that they made last year, and to meet customers' expectations, they might produce a certain quantity of those. But the thing is that the idea of, well, they're just going to make 25,000 of them because they think that they're going to sell those again this year, is kind of goes against the whole idea of trying to minimize the amount of cash that they're tying up in the business. Because for a company that size, we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. So you might say, well, why don't they just make 10,000 of them, 20,000 of them? Well, why don't we wait until we get the money from you, we swipe your credit card, and then we're going to order the component parts. What happens if the order doesn't come? And we ordered 25,000 processors because we thought that it was going to be Pentium 4. As it turns out, they don't want Pentium 4. They want a different processor. But absolutely, they're trying to manage that complexity, because you're right. So you could say, well, I want this with this, and this, and then it might cause more complexity right? And more cost than if they just standardized and did
And
make to stock.
The consumer expects it within 4 days also, so.
Right.
Have something.
Absolutely. So what they do is they're sharing of information. They have a forecast. They have a certain expectation of what the demand is gonna be, and they share that with their suppliers. So their supplier knows, because you can't just go to the supplier and say, oh yeah, well, yeah, we got orders. Now we need 10,000 of Pentium 4 chips.
You can't also, you can't go and ask them, I need one of this, because it doesn't, when you're buying both, when you have to service so many customers, you can't just, each personalized computer gets one chip from the supplier, give me one.
Yeah, so if that was the case, if they were able to do that, then there's another term, right? Harvey's interested in this. The term is called mass customization, which is a different aspect of their business model, right? Related to make to order is mass customization, which is that they're so responsive that they could produce, in effect, product on a mass scale, but they're so efficient that they're able to customize each one. Now, if Dell is able to do that, then that would be a great example of mass customization. And it's not easy to do. That really is state of the art. Have they done it? I wouldn't, I'm not in a position to say if they have or not, but certainly I would say that they're wishing that they could if they don't already. I mean, that would really be ideal. That's something I think somebody who has done that, which is very impressive, is Nike. So you could go onto their website and they don't have any limitations. You could get the sneakers in different colors. The swoosh could be blue, green, orange, purple, red. You even put your name on it. The tread on the bottom, you have a variety of different treads that you could put on the bottom, and different colors, and
The only negative is it takes 30 days.
so that's definitely a trade-off. And talking about 30 days, I also want to remind you that that's certainly one of the disadvantages of when we're sourcing product from, let's say, China, for example. Because everybody is so enamored by the lower cost of labor, but certainly one of the trade-offs is, well, it's not just in time, right? That's different from ordering from a company in Secaucus where you might be able to get it the same day. Well, we're thinking if you're sourcing, right? If you're a company and you're ordering parts. But if it's coming from China, then it takes 45 days. It's literally, maybe you heard this, this cliche that's sometimes used on a slow boat from China. Well, that's why. Because for a boat to a ship, boat is a wrong connotation. It's a ship. It's a large ship. But it's going to take 45 days for the product to get from China to, let's say, Chicago. And then once it reaches the West Coast, then we talk about what we refer to as Binney Land Bridge, which means that, well, now that you've gotten to the West Coast, it's going to take time for it to get to the Midwest, for example. So yeah, I agree. Mass customization is pretty impressive. Customers get a product that is unique, customized, tailored to what they want, meets their needs very specifically, but you have to wait. What do you think? How many of you would wait? How many of you think it's worth the wait?
What?
For the sneakers. You think it's worth the wait? Yeah, is it cool?
It's not worth the cost.
Oh, so how much is the difference in the cost?
Anywhere between 50 to 100 bucks.
Extra?
Yeah. From a regular pair of Nikes. Yeah.
All right. So good insight
Cheapest
there.
ones were 110.
All right, number 2. It says, which of these are true regarding the Japanese market? Except what?
Japanese consumers favor price over personal service.
Right, that's the one that's not true. On page 423, the Japanese consumers favor price over personal service. No, that's not true. All right, number 3. Number 3, Pienko.
The following have proved to be a successful way to break the trade barrier imposed by the Japanese distribution system.
Listen to him. Yeah, the best answer is A, direct catalog sales, which is very interesting. Who could explain why that's significant? What is that about? What is this about the Japanese distribution system and how direct catalog sales addresses that issue? What is that, direct catalog? What are we talking about?
It's like LLB and stuff for
For sure.
Yeah.
ordering from magazines.
Or you can order directly
Catalog,
from
that was
the
like
buyer.
Right. And
That's like my least favorite way to shop.
It's like, let's not try it on. Let's order it in the mail, pay first, and hopefully like it.
interesting. Well, how many of you guys shop on the internet? And does that vary from product to product? Like, is there some products you would buy online, like maybe like a flash drive you would buy online, but like Harvey is saying, well, I don't know, would I buy a sweater?
Shoes online, exactly. I mean, that really needs to be true.
Ties on.
I only buy shoes online that I've already owned.
Or like if it's Zappos and you know you can send it
Yeah,
back.
the
for
return
free.
policy.
The other thing is, there's things called reviews. Reviews can give you an overall, it might not tell you exactly what you want to know, but it can give you a nice summation.
Right, but what about, some people would say, well, yeah, I know that it's like, basically it's a good quality, but how do I know that, like Harvey says, that shoe is going to fit me? I know it's a well-made shoe, and it's, it's handmade, and it's leather, and so forth, but how do I know that it's going to be comfortable when I put it on? That I don't know, do I need a size 8? Do I need a size 9? Is it, is 9.5, is that really your size?
30-day return policy.
It's just like a pain though. Like you get to the store, you try it on, you don't like it, you try another size, try a different brand, but like let's say you want to invest in a shoe, I mean, it's not perfect, it's uncomfortable, whatever it is. I mean, yeah, you can send it back, but is it worth the process? I don't think so.
Yeah, there's definitely people who agree with you. Some people are doing most of their shopping online. But it depends, like there's different levels of involvement. Some are low involvement products, and that varies from person to person, what's considered to be a low involvement purchase. For others, well, what I might consider to be a low involvement purchase, somebody might consider to be high involvement. So how does the catalogs, how does that allow a company to cope with the Japanese distribution system?
But
All right, next question. Number 4, which of the following types of companies will most likely use the services provided by a home country middleman? E is on page 431. Companies which want to sell abroad with minimum financial commitment. So that would be the best answer in terms of companies that are most likely to use the services provided by a home country middleman. That's number 4, E. 5, another term for home country middleman is D, domestic middleman. Page 431. So home country middleman is also known as domestic middleman. Number 6, what is the basic function of the Export Trading Company Act? Right, B, it allows producers of similar products to form export trading companies. So producers that produce similar products are able to form export trading companies. That's on page 433. Number 7, a variety of factors affect choice of channels in a foreign market. So the choice of channels, we're talking about distribution. All of the following points should be addressed prior to the selection process except E. Identify decision-making processes and languages of prospective middlemen.
That would come in a later stage, I guess.
So before that, what are we going to do? One is identify specific target markets. So those markets where we want to sell our product. Specify marketing goals. What would be some of the key metrics? What would be our goals?
How much you're looking to sell, where you're
Right, dollar sales, unit sales. We should have a target for profit. Also the level of market share. We should, 3 is specify financial and personal commitments to the development of the international distribution. And 4 is identify, control the length of channels, terms of sale, and channel ownership. Number 8, which of the following is the highest doing business in China? Right, D, the capital required to maintain effective distribution, which is on page 436.
What page is number 7 on?
435.
Thank you.
Number 9. Most middlemen have little loyalty to their vendors. They handle brands in good times when the line is making money, but quickly reject such products within a season or a year if they fail to produce during that period. This is an example of problems associated with which of the following 6 C's of channel strategy? B, right, continuity. That's on page 437. And 10, on all levels of distribution, there is a clear correlation between the middleman's motivation and sales volume produced. That's on page 439.
Top 10.